webinar in the Ask Hala series, and we really hope you've enjoyed the first webinar. Today's webinar is about using WhatsApp and Facebook in teaching. Let's have a flashback on our last webinar. In last webinar, we had a look at synchronous teaching platforms, and we used Microsoft Teams as an example of synchronous teaching platforms, and we explored a range of techniques and tools that you can use in your online lessons. In today's webinar, we're going to have a look at WhatsApp and Facebook. We're going to think about why use them in teaching and professional development, how to use them, and what practical activities can we do by using them. What things should we consider when using them? Let's start with WhatsApp. So why WhatsApp? Using WhatsApp for teaching and professional development could be very useful, especially if your data package is limited or you have issues with the internet connectivity, because WhatsApp doesn't require a very strong internet connection. Or it's useful when you only can access the internet through your mobile phone because you don't have a laptop or a PC at home, or you have only one laptop or the number of devices available at home are very limited or shared by various family members. So having WhatsApp on your mobile phone could be very useful in following up on your professional development, and also could be very useful for the students to catch up with their lessons. Let's hear from our teachers across the world and see what they think about using WhatsApp for teaching. Yasser, for example, from MENA, from Middle East and North Africa, thinks that WhatsApp is particularly useful for giving feedback. And with 50 students in one group, it can be very difficult to give them all feedback during the online class time. So WhatsApp could be useful, especially WhatsApp groups, where you can put the students together and you can classify them by class. You can put them together in groups, and you can use WhatsApp to provide them with extra support and to extend their time of learning beyond the online class time. Noza from Brazil thinks that using WhatsApp was very good in flipping the traditional class model. So when you send some videos to your students before the class, you give them the chance to watch the video and come to the class prepared and ready to discuss what they have watched. And in this case, you save the online class time to discuss the important concepts in details. Mauricio from Peru thinks that WhatsApp particularly helped with the shy students. It helped them to gain confidence through interacting and discussing on a platform that they are very familiar and comfortable with. We also had some feedback from one of our teachers from our online Facebook community group, and this teacher thinks that WhatsApp is an excellent way of teaching, and you can use it at any time. You can post your content at any time, and the students can refer to the content and check it later at their own convenience, at their own pace. So it has a huge element of flexibility. Let's watch now a video from a teacher from Brazil. And in the video, the teacher speaks about how she used WhatsApp in a very interesting classroom activity. And the activity is called My Quarantine Picture Challenge.
A primeira aula foi uma aula em sala de aula. É como se eu tivesse fotos. I would like you guys to post a picture here in the group that represents the quarantine to you. Along with that picture, I want you guys to add a subtitle, okay? And share it with us. Today, we are going to look at Maria Eduarda's picture. What feeling do you think this picture represents? How can you relate to it? Did you guys notice that through this activity, we can relate to each other's experience? Então, eu acho que, de certa forma, ao mesmo tempo que nós estamos distantes, o que fica, né, de positivo é que a gente também se aproximou. E todas as pessoas que estão no nosso grupo.
So, in a nutshell, WhatsApp is, because you've seen the video now, and you can tell that WhatsApp is simple. You can use it with your students very simply. They are very familiar with it, and it's instant. You don't have to set up an account from scratch, or you don't have to create a new account or something. It's already on your mobile phone. It's a collaborative, and you can see now from the activity in the previous video that students collaborated together in through a WhatsApp group to work on an activity, and they shared pictures from the quarantine, and they commented on each other pictures, and they shared what the picture represented for them, and so on. So it's a collaborative, simple, instant, and familiar. So our next part is about how to set up the WhatsApp groups. You've got two types of groups on WhatsApp. Either to set up a broadcast only group, and in this case you're the group administrator and it's only you, and you're the only person who can send the messages. How to set that up? You go to the group settings, the normal group, you go to the settings and you click on send messages, and you change it to only admins. And this kind of WhatsApp group is very useful in sharing important information or making announcements, such as sharing important dates, for example, with the whole class and their parents, and you don't need them to respond back to you. Or the other option is to have separate groups perhaps for separate classes, separate levels. You manage that the way you like, and this makes the conversations easier to manage. How to set up groups? You open the WhatsApp application, you go to chats, you click on new group, and you start adding participants. And remember, you need to change the icon of the group. You need to have a picture for the group, and you need to add a name. Then you click create. So how do you provide input on WhatsApp? You can use WhatsApp groups to send videos or even texts as the week plan. So it's very good to have your plan ahead and known and announced to your students and their parents ahead of the week. You can also share sets of vocabulary every day. It could be photos, drawings, audio to demonstrate pronunciation. You can even replicate board work, because in remote teaching or in online teaching there is no real board where you can have charts or diagrams, but you can draw the diagrams and the charts and the tables or the grammar points on a piece of paper. Then you can take a picture of that. So you imagine that your board now became an A4 or a piece of paper, a sheet of paper. Then you take picture of that, then you share it through WhatsApp. You can use WhatsApp to notify students who missed a class, and you can of course send home assignments after a lesson, and you can use that to communicate deadlines and instructions. And of course you can give feedback on language errors. One activity as an example is find the mistake. You send them a text with some intentional errors, then you can ask them to find the mistake and correct the mistakes for themselves. So the next part is about setting up the tasks and the activities. Your tasks and activities through the WhatsApp could be simply based around what exists already in the textbook, or it could be something else like standalone activities, but make sure that in any case, those activities must be linked to the curriculum. Make sure also that you send the tasks out to the students regularly. It could be daily, it could be every couple of days, it could be weekly on every Thursday. Make sure that you have a regular timing where you send the tasks to the students, and make sure that this schedule is known and shared with the students. Again, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality and the focus. That's why we really advise you to have a clear focus of the language or the skill you're trying to teach through WhatsApp. It could be very overwhelming, sending millions of messages through a WhatsApp group. So have a clear focus for each activity you post on WhatsApp. So let's say you have an activity every Thursday. Make sure you mention that this activity focuses on listening, or this activity focuses on using present simple to talk about daily routines or something. You can also make use of the learner's environment or surroundings. You can ask them to take picture of objects around them and to talk about them, talk about pets, talk about parents, talk about photos from childhood, send pictures and caption them and share stories or build stories around them. So make sure that you utilize the surroundings of the learner's environment. So how do you receive the work and how do you give feedback through WhatsApp? It's very important to set deadlines for learners to submit tasks. Make sure that you're strict with that. It's the same thing you're doing anyways with your normal classes, your face-to-face classes. When you send out a task or an assignment, you give them a deadline, right? And make sure you make yourself available for feedback and for answering questions, but at a specific times. So you're not available 24 over 7. You're available to answer questions at specific times, and please communicate those times with the parents as well as with your students. It's very good to communicate clearly with the parents and make them aware when exactly their kids will need the mobile phones. And it's a very simple tip, but it's proven very useful. So when they use the mobile phones for learning, it doesn't mean that they can totally neglect using paper and pens and notebooks. It's very useful if they have a notebook with them to take down notes and record activities, because it can really get messy if you're sending tens and tens of messages on WhatsApp. So it's very difficult to go back and track down an interesting activity or a useful resource or a useful link. So it's good to advise your learners to record notes and to record their learning in a notebook so that they have a written reference that they can use at any time. One more use of the notebook is to review the language they've learned across the lessons. So it's recorded, it's there, it's compiled, they can recycle it at any time. When you ask them to submit their work, be flexible. So they can submit their work using text, using audio files, using photos. It's fine. It's okay. Give them a range of options and be flexible. This is one great option of WhatsApp. Now let's talk a little bit about some practical ideas to use WhatsApp for teaching. The first type of activity is the text to text. So you give your learners text and they respond in text as well. First idea is the banana fill. So you give them a text with gaps to fill, and in the gaps you can use the word banana or a picture of bananas. Then you ask them to replace the bananas with the right words, and they respond to you in text. Another idea is spot the error, and we've referred to this idea earlier in the webinar. You give them a text with some intentional errors within, and you ask them to spot the error and respond to you in text as well with the errors and the correction. Another idea is odd one out. You give them sets of words in text and you ask them to tell you and respond back with which word is the odd one. Another idea to use WhatsApp is the text audio activities. It's when you give them text, then they respond with audios, or you give them audios, then they respond with text. One example is dictation. So you send them audio file, you dictate something through an audio message, then they need to write down what they hear in the audio in a text message. Or the how do you spell that? When you send them an audio with a word or words, then they need to text you back with the right spelling of this or those words. How do you pronounce? It's when you send them the words in text and you ask them to respond back to you in audio with the right pronunciation of that or those words. Another idea is a combination of pictures and text. One example is what's in your pocket. So you ask them to tell you in pictures what they have in their pockets. So they take pictures of items that they have in their pockets and they caption the pictures with a simple description. Or the Pictionary, when you ask them to design a Pictionary, they choose random pictures of objects around them and they caption the pictures with things. Or when you send them pictures and you ask them to tell you what the pictures are or what the object is in text. Show me how. It's about describing a process. So you can ask them to show you how to make a cup of tea, for example. So they take pictures of the process and they caption the picture with a simple description, like single line to describe each stage of the process. Or the photo story, you give them a number of pictures and you ask them to put the pictures in a specific order so that they come up with a story. Then they caption the pictures with simple text to tell the story. Or you can give them the choice to pick the pictures themselves from their surroundings or from their neighborhood, and they can put the pictures together and tell the story in text. Another kind of activity is when you send them text, then they respond with emojis, or you send them emojis, then they respond with a text. An example is the emoji telegram. So you give them a message in the form of emojis, then they have to translate the message into a text. The emoji stories, you tell them a story using emojis, then they have to write down the story in text. The emoji physical appearance, you ask them to describe somebody they know but using emojis only, then you need to guess through the emojis what this person is like. Or the other way around, you give them the text and you ask them to describe this person in emojis, like dark hair, big eyes, a tall, short. the emoji collocations or idioms. So you can give them an example of a collocation using an emoji, for example, or two emojis. Then they have to respond with the collocation in text. What are the things you need to consider while using WhatsApp? Please check all the links carefully before you send them out to the learners to avoid sharing any inappropriate content. Keep an open mind, ask them always for feedback, and involve the parents also in the feedback process. Uh, it's not recommended for teachers to connect directly with younger learners on their mobile phones, so make sure you get a permission from their parents or caregivers to set up the groups. Something around the data usage. Some people won't have a lot of data available for the lesson content, so be mindful about the file size and use text only and avoid heavy files or big size files with videos and all of that. Make sure when you set up the WhatsApp groups you have group rules, and perhaps the first task in that group is to agree on the rules for the group. You can even do that through a grammar lesson through using the modal verbs like must, mustn't, should, shouldn't, etc. Now, how about using WhatsApp for professional development? It's not for learners only. It can also be useful for teachers. Let's watch a video on how to use WhatsApp or social media in general for your professional development.
Many of us use WhatsApp groups to connect with other teachers and share resources. Let's explore some tools that can help us get the most out of these groups. If your group members are very active and share a lot of resources and links, you may want to save some of the more interesting messages to read, watch, or reflect on later. You can do this using the star function. Select the message you want to save and click star. You can revisit these saved messages from your WhatsApp main menu by going to Starred Messages. It's a good idea to delete any irrelevant messages or forwards which are not related to professional development. You can delete messages by selecting them and clicking the delete icon. You can also delete more than one message by selecting multiple messages. You may have seen this icon across different websites and social media such as Twitter or Facebook. You can share a link from another site with your WhatsApp group. You can also post links from your WhatsApp group on other social media sites using this function. If you're getting disturbed by notifications from your WhatsApp group, you can mute the group. To mute notifications, go to the user function menu in a chat. Select the three dots in the top right corner, then select mute notifications. Ensure that show notifications is unchecked. If your group posts a lot of messages, PDF documents and links, it can sometimes be difficult to read these on your phone. You can open WhatsApp on a computer. Go to web.whatsapp.com on your computer. Go to the WhatsApp main menu on your phone and select WhatsApp Web. Scan the QR code on your screen and you will be able to see all your WhatsApp groups on your computer.
Some useful but very simple but very useful tips for using WhatsApp. It's a very easy tool for sharing resources and following the latest news in the ELT world. So it's a good medium really of collaborating with other teachers. If you want to read more on WhatsApp for teaching and for professional development, check out the Oxford University Press blog for more ideas to use WhatsApp with English language students. And also check the Teaching English British Council website for another blog on some ideas on using WhatsApp. And there is also a very useful article on the Teaching English website on using mobile messenger apps to teach English remotely. We're looking now at the second tool, Facebook. I have some figures on the screen now, and I want you to guess what these figures mean. 180 million, 2.6 billion, and 96%. Well, the 2.6 billion represents the number of the monthly active users of Facebook globally, and 180 million of them live in the Middle East and North Africa, and 96% of them use Facebook through their mobile phones. So it's perhaps the most popular social media platform in history. It's good for so the one reason why Facebook, it's because of its popularity, its massive popularity. Another good thing about Facebook is that it's good for limited data packages. You can use Facebook Lite if you don't have strong internet connection. You can use it on laptops and desktops, and if you don't have laptops or desktops at home, you can access it through mobile phones. And of course, using Facebook for educational purposes can really enhance what we call the digital citizenship skills. And it's a very important set of skills that young people and children and young learners need to develop, especially these days. So in a nutshell, Facebook is useful because it's of its collaborative nature. You can use the option of going live. You can also use the option of making polls. It's interactive, it's familiar. It has calendars, so you can arrange for events and see how many people are interacting or planning to come to the events. So to get started with using Facebook, you need to create a new account because you don't want to share your personal account with the learners. And you can start by creating a closed group, which is just for your lessons. And you can divide the class into smaller groups, and you can also create separate Facebook groups for your learners. You need to plan how you're going to use this platform, for what, at what times. And perhaps one suggestion is to make a short video to introduce yourself and explain exactly how the lessons will take place on Facebook, and communicate what you expect from the learners, and don't forget to involve the parents. So how do you provide input? One way to provide information and to explain concepts or to even set tasks for the learners is to use the feature of the Facebook Live. You go live, you interact with the learners, you explain information, and you explain concepts. You can also upload things like recorded stories, listening texts or videos, and through all of this you can explain concepts, or you can demonstrate the right pronunciation, and you can set tasks based on these. If you want to help learners with the reading, you can also post a sample text for them to read, or you can share links for them to direct them to other reading texts or other sources for them to access. How do you set up tasks and activities? You can upload posts with tasks and activities, and you keep posting one task daily to keep the learners engaged and motivated. I mean, you don't want to post all of the tasks together one day, then your learners don't hear from you for a week or two or something. So keep posting your tasks regularly, every day or every couple of days. Have a schedule for that, just to keep them engaged and connected. You can even set up quizzes through the polls option, perhaps at the end of every week to check their learning, or you can post pictures and videos and ask them to start discussions around that. For speaking, you can get them to upload recorded audio files. Then you can assess their speaking and you can give them feedback. You can even demonstrate how you can pronounce a certain vocabulary. Now, how do you receive work and give them feedback? Again, set deadlines. Um, Apart from the polls and uploading files and giving the sharing links for resources, you can also conduct live sessions for questions and answers, and from my experience, parents found this very useful. And you can give feedback and answers from your messenger. And for longer written tasks, you can ask learners to upload images of the written tasks for you to assess. Then you can respond with voice messages. And again, the same note we made for the WhatsApp, encourage them to maintain a notebook to record their learning. It's a better way to manage the resources and take notes. Some practical ideas for using Facebook is to check Facebook for education, and actually what really interests me there is the 9 pillars or the nine elements of digital citizenship. And you'll find a range of resources there on how to develop the students' digital literacy, how to improve their security awareness, how to tell them more about their digital rights and responsibilities, digital wellness, digital etiquette, lots of interesting skills that you can really help your learners gain through Facebook. Just check Facebook for education and particularly the digital citizenship part. What are the things we need to consider? Copyrights are important, so when you share resources, make sure you take copyright restrictions into your account. Ask for permissions from parents to use Facebook at certain times that you agree on with parents. Again, don't forget to set up rules and do's and don'ts for the group. For the safeguarding, make sure that Facebook recommends that only people over the age of 13 set up their own accounts. So again, communicate this very clearly with the learners and the parents. And make sure you make the groups closed and private so that you prevent anybody from intruding the groups. Anybody who's not on your list, anybody who you don't know, or who's a stranger, basically. Now, is Facebook only for learners? No. On Facebook, teachers can find fantastic resources for teaching English. Check out the BBC Learning English, the Learn English British Council Facebook page, the Teaching English British Council Facebook page. There is also another useful page for Edutopia, National Geographic, Cambridge English, Cambridge University Press, TED Ed, The Cult of Pedagogy, and the English Teaching 101. These are my list for very useful educational and teaching Facebook pages where you find fantastic range of resources, and also there are communities where you can contact fellow teachers from across the world and ask for their advice and share experience. If you want to know more about using Facebook for educational purposes, check out the SWGFL magazine for Facebook guide for families and for schools. And there are also a couple of very useful articles on the Teaching English website about using Facebook to teach English remotely and using social media in the classroom in general. So in today's webinar, we looked at why using WhatsApp and Facebook in teaching and professional development, and how to use them, and what practical activities we can do by using them, and what things we should consider when using them. Don't forget to check out the Teaching English British Council Facebook page. There is a dedicated page to support teachers and teacher educators during the COVID-19 time. Check it out. It has fantastic resources. Also, don't forget to sign up for the teacher educator community on the British Council website and join the British Council teacher community group on Facebook. Next webinar, we're going to look at using Edmodo and how to use it, but for asynchronous learning. So stay tuned for that one. And I hope you found today's webinar useful. And thank you very much.